Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, Julie and I are back here to provide you, hopefully, some valuable information about the basing of the F-35 in Burlington. I am Colonel Rosanne Greco, retired Air Force colonel who has been, I guess, one of the leaders in the opposition to the F-35. And my sidekick today is...
My name is Julie Macuga. I live here in Burlington, and I am a researcher of environmental justice issues, and I've been working on this particular issue for a number of years. So we're gonna tell a little story today.
First of all, we want to thank CCTV for giving us the opportunity to get the hidden information, as we call the hidden whys of the F-35, out into the public. And we hope you're finding this valuable, and send in your questions, comments, and we'll be happy to answer them in future shows. So last time we gave you a brief background on the basing process, and we covered what happened. This time we're going to cover who made that happen. We only have time to cover one individual, and today that will be Senator Patrick Leahy. The next time we're going to cover some senior officials at the Vermont Air National Guard and their role in this. So we're going to start. Julie will kick it off with a little background. Right. So,
you know, Senator Leahy, the guy they named the airport after, of course, had nothing to do with any of this, but no, not really. To make it clear, the F-35 should have never been based here in Vermont. We can't change the past, and we can't undo the grave mistake. As you will learn, it was a mistake. It was a concerted and deliberate effort on the part of Leahy, his staff, and officials at VTANG. But we're doing this now because Leahy is out of office. We have two new people, Congresswoman Becca Balint and Mayor Emma Mulvaney-Stanek. These are the first senior elected officials since 2009 who took the time to actually listen to people about the facts and the seriously flawed F-35 basing process. What's more is they actually care about the F-35's impacts on Vermonters. Neither Sanders or Welsh, in 15 years, have ever engaged with the public, in particular, the people directly affected by the noise of the F-35. They were repeatedly invited to attend public and private meetings on the F-35, but they went along with Senator Leahy. I know that a lot of people will expect for Senator Sanders to sort of stand up to this kind of thing, but that was never the case. It was always lockstep with Leahy, and we found it shameful. So we'll now discuss their actions and inactions in this and future shows.
So as we told you last time, the basing process involved a very extensive analysis that's required by the National Environmental Protection Policy Act. It also involved highly inappropriate and unethical and possibly prohibitive activities, to include interference in the process through manipulation of facts and data, such as, well, maybe intentional, scoring errors that were designed to misrepresent the facts on the ground. Second thing was they orchestrated public comments. We may go into that later about the postcards. There was an inappropriate attempts by some military personnel to intimidate members of the public, and there was a withholding of crucial information that directly affects public safety. So, Julie?
So today we're going to tell you some of the various ways in which Senator Patrick Leahy influenced this basing decision, while simultaneously telling the public that he had no control over the Air Force's decision and was never going to put his finger on the scale to tip the basing decision one way or the other. If time allows, we'll read you some of what he said and wrote, and what the then Air Force officials said and wrote to him with his Sorry, my apologies. We'll be reading some letters between the Air Force officials and Senator Leahy about their direct involvement in this basing process. And as we told you last time, we have thousands of email exchanges between and among Senator Leahy's office, VTANG officials, and Air Force basing officials.
Yeah. So we mentioned to you last time that we had filed a lawsuit against the Air Force, and that as a result of that lawsuit, they had to release to us the Air Force's official documents. So in March of 2018, a group of volunteers, 11 women, started reading the available, what they call the administrative records, and there were 68,000 of those. We found hundreds of them that showed highly questionable actions during the basing process. And one of the most startling discoveries that we found was that Air Force officials had decided on at least 4 occasions to select another Air Guard base, which is McEntire Air Guard Base in South Carolina, over Burlington.
It's really important to know that we found over 60 references from the Air Force officials expressing doubt, concern, and opposition to selecting Burlington as the basing decision for the F-35A. Comments from mid to senior level officials in multiple Air Force organizations indicated that Burlington should not be selected. Rather, they stated that McEntire Joint National Guard Base in South Carolina was the best choice, both environmentally and operationally. As Rosanne said, on at least 4 occasions, February 2013, April 2013, August 2013, and November 2013, the Air Force officials recommended against selecting Burlington. In March 2013, they even drafted an official record of decision choosing McEntire. Throughout 2013, Air Force officials recommended a number of actions designed to avoid basing the F-35A in Burlington, such as delaying making a decision to select any Air Guard base because of the problems with Burlington, temporarily bypassing Burlington, and selecting another base, McEntire.
Julie and I, as you may have noticed if you watched the last show, we're reading from notes here. And that's because we want to be really specific. We don't want to give our opinions or conjecture. We're actually reading from documents that the Air Force released. So that's sort of why we're looking at our papers this time more than we did last time. We don't want to bore you to tears, but we want to make sure that we are giving you the accurate information. So that's a side note. So the 11 of us women found over 50 references of instances of direct engagement and interference by Senator Patrick Leahy and his staff. The senator called and wrote to senior Air Force officials, 1, to get them to change noise models, and it's a software tool whereby they can it predicts how loud the F-35 will be, to claim the Air Force had misrepresented HUD and FAA guidance, the Housing Department and the Federal Aviation Administration guidance regarding houses in the noise zone being unable to qualify for federal loans, insurance, subsidies, assistance. 3, to alter the manner in which the Air Force counted public comments. And 4, to direct the Chief of Staff of the Air Force to select Vermont for the F-35 basing. So those are 4 of the key things, efforts, actions that Senator Leahy personally did and got his staff to do. By the way, he succeeded in getting everything he wanted in those 4 categories and beyond.
So Senator Leahy did all of this while telling the public he was not involved in the basing process. In letters he sent to constituents in June of 2012, he said, quote, "Felt strongly that none of our state's congressional delegation should put our fingers on the scale," end quote. In a prepared document on December 12, 2012, he stated, quote, "The final basing decision for the F-35A will be made not by Congress, but by the United States Air Force," end quote. In a press report on April 16, 2013, a spokesman for Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy said, quote, "The senator has made no attempt to influence the processing of locating the U.S. Air Force's next generation fighter jet at a Vermont Air National Guard base," end quote. And finally, in a press report on May 31st, 2013, quote, Leahy said, quote, "Leahy and his office have said the senator has made no attempts to influence this process." That's what he told the public, and we're going to tell you what they actually did.
So one of the multiple ways that Leahy tried to force the Air Force to do what he wanted was to insist that they use a new method, which was a software tool, to determine the noise of the F-35. We saw months of calls and meetings and emails from Senator Leahy to the Air Force. In November of 2010, Senator Leahy wrote a letter to the then Secretary of the Air Force, Michael Donnelly, saying, quote, I urge you to delay the EIS, that's the Environmental Impact Statement, until the Air Force incorporates the latest flight profile data for the F-35A, which is known as CARNS 3. End quote. On the 29th of December 2010, the then EIS F-35 basing project manager, Cheryl Parker, sent out an email saying that she had, quote, been instructed to take a pause in our F-35 operational basing environmental analysis. This pause will allow senior leadership to decide whether or not to continue the current tool or make revisions to the EIS based on another software tool, end quote. The EIS release was delayed by a year in order to switch to the new noise model that Senator Leahy wanted them to use.
Right. Leahy also tried to manipulate the public. In the economic impact section of the EIS, the Air Force reported on HUD, FAA, and VA guidelines. These agencies advise homeowners in an area in which the average noise level is 65 decibels to provide written disclosure to all prospective buyers or lessees of their property. HUD and the VA also note that properties in these noise areas may not be eligible for federally guaranteed loans, program assistance, subsidies, or insurance. Senator Leahy expressed concern that the, quote, Air Force may be misrepresenting FAA and HUD guidance with regards to noise contours and needlessly limiting or negatively misstating the impact, unquote. The Air Force commented in emails that they did not, quote, misinterpret FAA and HUD guidance.
In another effort, Leahy tried to get the Air Force to change the way they counted the number of comments they received from the public. This gets a little convoluted, so I'm going to try to explain this. So in June of 2013, the Air Force erroneously reported that the majority of the public comments they received were in support of the basing, and that was an article, I believe, in the Burlington Free Press. A number of the public who were knowledgeable about the comments contacted the Air Force and said that was mistaken. And the Air Force realized they had made a mistake, and in my discussions with them, they didn't know how it happened. But anyway, they then issued a correction to that, and the actual numbers were this. So the correct numbers were that of the over 1,100 individual comments they received, 73% were in opposition to the basing, 25% expressed general support, and 2% were of no opinion. In response to this, Senator Leahy had his staff call the Air Force, quote, hoping that the article was wrong and that there were more supportive comments versus opposing comments, end quote. So in the face of the public response, which according to the Air Force tally was overwhelmingly opposed to the basing, quote, the senator's office felt that the Air Force should have characterized some of the public comments differently, which would reflect more community support, end quote. You know what that means. He wanted them to change it so it looked like, well, he wanted to falsify the data. Let's just put it that way. So the Air Force had previously explained in their EIS how they counted comments. So petitions, regardless of how many signatures are on them, and by the way, this was not just for this basing. This is the way they do it all the time. So when they get a petition that has a printed statement at the top and then people sign their name, they count that as one. That's just the way they do it. That's standard practice and wasn't unique to Burlington. In addition to individual letters, emails, and petition, the Air Force also received thousands of pre-printed, pre-addressed, and pre-stamped postcards that stated support for the basing. By the way, the postcards were sent to residents by VTANG surrogate organizations. Here's where the rub comes in. So they did, the Air Force did receive over 9,000 of these standard postcards. All someone had to do was sign their name, which was very much like petitions, according to how the Air Force would have counted it. But there was a greater problem with the postcards because the Air Force project manager stated, quote, "The reason which was printed on the postcard was factually inaccurate," end quote, and that, quote, "It is impossible to determine if each sender knew the error, if they knew of the error, whether the people who submitted the postcards would still support the bed down," end quote. Therefore, the Air Force decided they could not be counted or reported. One, because they fell into the same category as a petition, but more than that, because the information on those postcards was not correct. However, after Senator Leahy's intervention, the Air Force reported they counted the postcards that contained the erroneous information.
The last example we have time to mention is Leahy's efforts to counter the Air Force's efforts to pick another guard base, or delay making a decision at all. On the 30th of August 2013, Air Force officials were about to select the active duty Air Force base and delay making a decision on which guard base to select. And the 3rd of September 2013, Leahy phoned General Mark Welsh, the then Air Force Chief of Staff, the 4-star general in charge of the Air Force, to tell him he didn't want to split the decision. He didn't want to delay in selecting the Air Guard base, and he wanted Burlington selected. We found more than 50 citations showing Leahy's involvement. Some of these citations were transcripts of phone calls that Leahy made to senior and even mid-level staffers of Air Force officials. Some were mentions of Leahy's letters that he had sent to the Air Force, and some were emails that his staff sent. Some were meetings with Air Force officials that Leahy had actually attended himself.
So we have some time. So what we wanted to do now is we wanted to actually read to you some of the direct quotes from the administrative record that reference Senator Leahy. We don't have time to read them all, but we'll...
15 pages.
Yes. So we have 15 pages of them, and we're going to try to do it as coherently as possible to give you an idea. And we're just going to go...
Sure.
Huntley Brinkley, you don't know what that means. Many of you don't know what that means, but anyway. So, Julie, why don't you start with the first one?
Sure. This is an email between two Air Force officials on the 27th of July, 2010. Quote, "I heard from Senator Leahy's staff today, and they are looking at a 9th of August date to meet here in D.C. The point of this meeting is to get all players together, Burlington, ANG, ACC, Air Staff, to all the personal staffers, J.P. Dowd and Will Goodman being one of Leahy's staffers, about noise abatement as it relates to the city of Burlington, Vermont. Sounds like Burlington already has all the answers. Pooter, a VTANG officer, has been working this issue for a while."
Mention the citation number.
The citation number for that is AR number 43700.
Okay, so the second one we're going to read is between two Air Force officers that occurred on August the 3rd, 2010. Quote, "Senator Leahy's office is requesting that we send an 04 to 06, that's a major to colonel level rep, mid to senior level, to attend an F-35 noise abatement meeting in D.C. on the 9th of August. And that's from citation number, administrative record, citation number 43700.
The next one is more Air Force officials, including, I'm forgetting Engelman's designation.
Well, she's a mid-level, she is retired civilian.
Yes,
in the
very involved in the
Pentagon.
EAS process. Yeah. And this was on the 30th of September 2010. Quote, "I just got back from an engagement on Capitol Hill with members of Senator Leahy's staff concerning F-35 noise abatement procedures." That's number 44974.
Okay, I know I get the short ones. Julie gets the long ones. The next one is also between two Air Force staff officers, and this was sent. By the way, these are all emails back and forth. October the 5th, 2010. quote, attached is correspondence about the recent meetings with Senator Leahy's staff on F-35 noise, end quote, and that is Administrative Record number 45630.
All right, so you're going to have to follow me for this one. It's a little bit convoluted. This is from Senator Leahy to Donnelly, who was the then Secretary of the Air Force. So the highest rankings you can get on either sides of this thing.
By the way, that's a political appointee. The Secretary of the Air Force is a civilian appointed by the President.
So this was on the 9th of November, 2010. Quote, I was pleased that the Air Force selected the Air National Guard Station in Burlington, Vermont, as one of the Air Force's preferred locations for initial basing of an F-35 Joint Strike Fighter Squadron. As the Air Force prepares the initial draft of the EIS for release, I wanted to urge you to delay the EIS until the Air Force incorporates the latest flight profile data for the F-35, which is known as CARNS 3. By incorporating CARNS 3 flight profiles into the draft EIS, the Air Force may be able to demonstrate to local communities that the F-35 can depart and recover at noise levels less than those generated when the aircraft operated at full power. I understand this request may further delay the current F-35 timeline, but given the overall delay of the F-35 program, we should not rush to publish less accurate and more alarmist information when the public would be better served by a minor delay and more accurate F-35 flight profile data. The potentially beneficial operational information in CARNS 3 profiles far outweighs the cost of further delaying the release of the EIS, end quote. That is both 45651 and 46121.
Okay. A little footnote to that. The reason Senator Leahy and the VTANG pushed so hard to get the Air Force to use this new noise model was because it made the F-35 noise decibel level lower. But it was not proven. So, I mean, it was a new tool, hadn't yet been not ready for prime time.
And none of the other EISs for the other basings used this. There was no reason for them to suddenly change to this new untested model.
It was an effort to pull the wool over our eyes.
Inflate the numbers, yeah.
Yeah. So the next one is also between two Air Force officials, and this was November the 10th, 2010. This is reference Senator Leahy's letter to Secretary of the Air Force Donnelly, quote, this is virtually the same message that I got from Vermont staffers in my visit with them. I presume at that point somebody had made them aware of pending CARNS 3, that's the new software tool. They mentioned that they would send, quote, a letter of concern, quote, but this seems a little stronger than that, end quote. That's from Administrative Record 45693.
This next one is more Air Force folks to each other. This is the 15th of November 2010, quote, Senator Leahy sent a letter requesting the Air Force delay the release of the F-35 EIS. We are in the process of preparing a response. Currently, there is no certified data available that would support a decision to delay the release of the draft EIS. Whatever discussed with the TAG needs to correspond with what we provide Senator Leahy, end quote. That's number 46118.
The next one, and we're gonna not be able to cover all of this. This is 6 months later from two Air Force officers, and this was April the 18th, 2011. I'm just gonna read a little bit of this, not the whole thing. Quote, a letter from Senator Leahy from Vermont pushing for the use of CARNS 3 is what started us down this road. And there's more. I'm going to skip to the next part, and this is still quotes from the administrative record. Senator Leahy somehow found out about this issue and pushed to include it into the study that they were doing then. This is another part of the the other part of the politics is the issue with the city of Valparaiso outside of Eglin. And there's more, but I'm going to stop right there at the end quote. And that is, what they're referring to is they were sued by a city in Florida because of the noise of the F-35. And they were very worried that if in Burlington we used a different way to measure the noise, that they would then be sued again. They were changing horses in midstream. So And that is from Administrative Record 47410.
This next one is between a number of high-ranking officials in the Vermont Air National Guard to each other. This was on April 26, 2012. Quote, "We may need to get Senator Leahy involved and have his office contact Senator Susan Collins' office. This is where the congressional letter below is being originated from. I would be more than happy to get involved. I just need some direction on whether you would like me to go to VFR direct to Senator Collins' office or work through Will Goodman, being Leahy's staffer." That is number 51240.
And that was from Lieutenant Colonel Caputo, by the way, of
Yes.
the VTANG. All right.
I believe flies the F-35s now. Or did at some
He's
point.
flying with Beta now, I believe. Right. But next time we're going to tell you way more about VTANG because we have a lot of their emails too. The next one is also between two Air Force officials. This was June the 27th, 2012. Quote, "Got a call this morning from Senator Leahy's office regarding the F-35 basing at Burlington. His first request was for a general breakdown or synopsis of the comments for the basing action, such as the ratio of favorable versus unfavorable. For instance, 80% versus 20%, 50-50, etc. This is all in the document. They would like this sometime within the next week or so, if possible. His second request was for a copy of the basing score sheet for Burlington," end quote. That's from Administrative Record 53419.
This next one I'll give you a little context for is from Leahy, Sanders, and Welsh, our congressional delegation to the Secretary of the Air Force, Donnelly. And it's kind of important to note we found a ton of references to Leahy and almost nothing for Welsh and Sanders. They were kind of just lockstep with Leahy the whole time, just, yeah, we'll do whatever he wants. This is from July 11th, 2012, and it says, quote, "We ask as you consider the decision of whether to deploy the F-35 to the Vermont Air National Guard, that the Air Force look favorably on these and other noise abatement measures," end quote. And that's number 53562.
Okay. And the next one, also between two Air Force officials. This was on October the 19th, 2012. Quote, "Will Goodman called me," staffer for Senator Leahy. "He heard through the grapevine that the Air Force was getting feedback that the Vermont delegation was not supportive of potentially basing the F-35 in Vermont. He stated this was coming from as high as the Vice Chief's office," that's the second in charge of the Air Force. "Senator Leahy wants to ensure the Air Force that this position is not true. The Vermont delegation is strongly supportive of the Air Force basing the F-35s in Vermont. I told him he would pass this along to the relevant decision makers, so in your discussions on this issue, please ensure that this is properly represented," end quote. I'll do the rest because it's it's at the same date, just emails between two different officials. Quote, "Please see the conversation with Will Goodman, Senator Leahy's military liaison advisor. He wants to make sure the Air Force leadership knows they want the F-35. I think this is stemming from the article below," and then he attached an article probably in the Burlington Free Press, and then end quote. And then one other email, which happened on the same day, October the 19th, 2012, quote, "Regarding our telecom, Senator Leahy is concerned that the Air Force may think Vermont is not in favor of the F-35 being based in Vermont. However, that is not the feeling of the delegation," end quote. And that's from Administrative Record 55514.
All right, we're running out of time, so we may have to skip around here just a bit. This next one is from that same date, the October 19th, 2012. This is more Air Force folks to each other, and it is, quote, "Will Goodman," again, Leahy's staffer, "MLA for Senator Leahy, called me today and asked that I share a concern from Senator Leahy. There is a vocal group in Vermont who is not in favor of the basing of the F-35 in Burlington. However, this is not the view shared with the Vermont delegation. On the contrary, the Vermont delegation is strongly supportive of the F-35 in Burlington. Senator Leahy will bring this up in his telecon with the Secretary of the Air Force on the 25th of October, and I told Will that I would pass this on to the CSAF as well." He understands the basing process and how Burlington will be scored, however they're scored, but he is concerned about the perception this vocal minority might have on a strategic Air Force decision. And that's 55544.
And the next one. This is exciting, isn't it, folks? We're sorry we have to read to you, but we wanted to make sure that you that we were factually and exact in what we're telling you, what Senator Leahy said and did. This one is also between two Air Force officials on November the 15th, 2012. Quote, Senator Leahy has requested a follow-up to the information provided in a previous request back in July. See email below. With the total number of comments received by the Air Force, including and counting petition signatures as individual comments, period. There is no need to characterize whether comments were positive or negative, just looking for the total, end quote. Administrative Record 46018. Remember, we told you earlier, they were going to count these as one, and this is part of the effort from Senator Leahy's office to not do that, to change the way they did it.
Should we finish with my favorite one?
Let's see. I think we ought to.
Okay. So this is from a document from the administrative record called Command Messages F-35A. It was written by Vermont Air National Guard's PR staff, and it is titled Questions We Hope We Don't Get. And number 3 on that set of questions is, do you know of any improprieties that Senator Leahy had his hands in that would have affected basing decisions in Vermont's favor? End quote. And that is number 58254.
So the last one, I think we'll because we're running out of time, is the one that sort of sealed the deal to get Burlington selected. This was on September the 3rd, 2013. This was a transcript. Someone was taking notes when Senator Leahy called the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Right? And this is it. Quote, Ma'am, Generals, notes from today's phone conversation between Senator Leahy and General Welsh. And these are bullets. Senator Leahy opened with casual conversation and wanted to be a little more parochial concerning the F-35. He strongly supports F-35 in Vermont, tiny vocal minority that is against it. He has received over 200 letters from the group. However, he has over 13,000 signatures for it. Goes back to the false data on these postcards. He strongly urges the Air Force to not delay the record of decision in light of the rumor that there would be a 2-year delay for another basing decision. He understands the rationale of splitting the decision between the 2 records of decision, one for active duty and one for the Air National Guard, but he asks for little to no delay in the 2 records of decision. By not delaying the Guard's decision affords more planning time prior to delivery of aircraft. He concluded that a huge compliment, he concluded with a huge compliment of the current Air National Guard unit. And this is a quote from what Senator Leahy said to General Welsh. Quote, this is a quote and a quote. They are doing a great job and are the most loyal, patriotic people in the world. You would be proud of them, and they would not disappoint you if they got the F-35, end quote. General Welsh explained the current status of the basing process and offered to call Senator Leahy back once he and the Secretary of the Air Force got more information and got closer to making a decision. General Welsh promised he would keep the Adjutant General of the VTANG and Senator Leahy's staff informed of each step as we come to a decision. And then they list some things they had to do. One of them is to take the lead on informing Senator Leahy's staff about the phone conversation. So they were going to go back and tell Leahy's staff what the senator said and what the chief of staff said. Set up a follow-up engagement in mid-September, late October with Senator Leahy, and then their legal staff would take the lead in informing at that point the SINC, the commander in charge of Air Combat Command, and then very respectfully, George, end quote. And the administrative record number for that is 62303. And that is all the time we have today relating what we learned from the 68,000 documents. We hope, I mean, there's so much information. We hope we didn't overwhelm you or confuse you. We tried to cover as much as we could in the time we had, but we wanted to give you an idea of what actually happened behind the scenes, despite the protestations that Senator Leahy made along the way that he didn't want to get involved, he didn't want to put his finger on the scale, he believed that this was an Air Force decision. He did everything but that. So next time we're going to talk about what we found in the administrative record that relates to some officials in the Vermont Air National Guard. And any closing words, Julie? I know we did a lot of reading today. We hopefully won't do that again.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with story time with us here. Just want to reiterate that we found over 50 of these citations involving Leahy and his direct involvement in this basing process. So there's plenty more on this. Happy to send it to you if you want to read 1,000 pages.
Yes. If anybody wants this, we have it in a document. Happy to send it to you. Yeah.
But yeah, until next time, I think that's all for today.
Right. So thank you for now. We had 2 or 3, maybe last month. Maybe we got 5 or 6 this month of listening to this. We'll see you next.
73.
Really?
Yes.
My goodness. Well, hello. We'll see you again next month with some more information directly from the administrative record. And then in future months, we're going to tackle the nuclear component of this. So until then, happy Valentine's Day in a few days.